Well, there's plenty of stories, whether you look internationally or domestically in the United States, and sometimes it's not easy to separate fact from fiction in US politics. This week, there was a story swirling about that Michelle Obama would take over from Joe Biden. We'll get to that story a little later, but let's head to the United States. And joining me is the Boston Globe Deputy DC Bureau Chief, Kopan. Good morning, our time. Welcome to the program. And of course, this is, we've just seen the story of the 3 killed US servicemen. It's a huge story, and particularly for the President, Joe Biden.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the conflict that has broken out in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, which sort of seemingly by the day threatens to spiral into a broader conflict, has really become a really all-consuming force in domestic politics. When the president travels, he's being greeted by protesters who, in large part, are mostly supporting Palestinian rights and criticizing his support of Israel. But we've seen also Biden being a little bit sort of more critical of Israel than we have in recent days, including sanctioning some settlers for violence in the West Bank. So you're really seeing Biden trying to kind of thread this needle. But now that you have attacks by proxies believed to be connected to Iran, there's a very delicate balance of response and also risk of further conflagration in the Middle East, which no one wants.
Absolutely. Now, we've got some live pictures there of Joe Biden in Delaware, but he has been campaigning in Michigan, and it's interesting. Michigan, of course, was one of those very important states in the last election. High numbers of Arab Americans in Michigan, and there were protests when he was there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Arab community in Michigan has really put Biden on notice. It's a very complicated state. It's a blue collar state. President Biden just won the endorsement of a very powerful union that represents auto workers. Michigan is sort of ground zero for auto manufacturing in the US. So that's a critical endorsement that helps in the state. But then you have the Arab community. There's also a Jewish community in Michigan. I mean, there are a lot of different constituencies, a large number of Black voters in Michigan that Biden is trying to reach. And it is one of the very small handful of states that can tip the balance of the election, thanks to our electoral college system here in the States. There are a few where even a swing of 10, 20,000 voters can tip the balance of the entire presidential race. And so it's definitely a state we would expect both campaigns, the presumed nominees, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, to pay a lot of attention to. And recent polling in the state has not been good for Joe Biden. And that's not entirely just the Arab community. I mean, it's sort of all of the above constituencies coming together. So that's a place that he's going to need to show up support if he wants to get another term in office.
It's very interesting to look at the polls, because I read a piece this morning and the first half of it was saying that Donald Trump's got things to worry about because the polling is going the way of Joe Biden. The second half of the piece was from another poll where it said that Donald Trump was ahead of Joe Biden.
Yeah, I mean, we're months from election day. So, take any polling with a grain of salt. But at the same time, the campaigns are looking at this and trying to figure out where are their weak spots, where do they need to kind of shore up support? And there are certainly some that are showing warning signs in Michigan. But there's also a phenomenon in the U.S. This is not a popular matchup. There are a lot of voters who are not happy to see Joe Biden versus Donald Trump on their ballots come November. I think there are a lot of voters that are still in denial that is actually going to be what's going to happen in November. The primaries are technically not done, even though it seems that Donald Trump has run away with it on the Republican side, and there's not really a serious challenge on the Democratic side. So, there's a lot of room for change. We'll see what the economy does. We'll see what happens when voters actually confront the reality that is facing them in their choice in November. The role of independent candidates, many months to unfold. But certainly, the polls are a snapshot in time, as we always say.
Absolutely. It's going to be a dramatic 2024, no matter how we look at it. Now, I did mention in the intro this story about Michelle Obama. Do you think it's just a fanciful Hollywood tale, or is it a possibility that Michelle Obama could replace Joe Biden?
I don't even know if Hollywood would buy it, quite frankly. It's mostly a Twitter conspiracy theory. I mean, it's not a real thing for anyone for whom that possibly bursts a bubble. But no, I mean,
nice headline.
Joe Biden is the presumed Democratic nominee, and that's not a likely scenario.
All right, now US Federal Reserve has left its official cash rate on hold for the fourth straight meeting. But look, it does look like that rates will change and be cut throughout the course of 2024.
It's certainly something many folks are hoping for. The housing market right now in the U.S. is pretty tight, which means pretty expensive. The interest rates really affect mortgages. There are many advocates who want to see it come down, if only to deal with the affordable housing crisis that we have. Not to mention borrowing and lending. But the Federal Reserve has been relatively conservative on this front, but it does seem like they've at least ceased their campaign of hikes as inflation in the U.S. has come down. So it's certainly something a lot of folks are watching to see if at some point they decide, okay, they can actually bring interest rates down and not just hold them steady. And then what the broader sort of cascade effects of our economy will be if those interest rates come down, including in the housing market.
Yeah, that could really help Joe Biden. Of course, there's a real lens, not only in the United States, but here in Australia, on cost of living and economics. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. I look forward to having a chat real soon.
Thanks so much for having me.